All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning share, to thank our TALMUD Torah sponsors for the month of Teves, Mrs. Selma Woolf, for dedicating all the Shiurim and Drushos this month with immense gratitude for the refuos from Hashem and the merit of refuah for all of those in need, and in the zchus of our brave soldiers and the return of our hostages. Leah Sol as a zchus for refuah for her daughter Ilana bas Esther, for the safety of our soldiers and the safe return of all of the hostages to their family. Our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Gedaliah and Donna Rosenbloom, in memory of Donna's mother, Helen Sandler, Chana bas Moshe, zichron livracha, on the occasion of her 11th yahrzeit. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD Torah, the Neshama will have an aliya and the family in Neshama. And of course, we dedicate all of Maseches Bava Kamma, Le'ilu Nishmas, Eliyahu, Michal, Harush, Hashem Yikom Damo. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD Torah, his Neshama will have an aliya and his family in Neshama. So with that, let us begin. So we are continuing today. Today's daf is Samech Daled 64, and we are picking up in Meretz Hashem on Samech Gimel on the base 63b. I think we left off with Uminalan de Bishvua. Is that correct? Bishlama.
Yeah.
Is that further down? Hope it's further down. It was going further up. Where is it? How far up? Oh, B'Shalom Damar. I see it. Okay. So actually, you know what? Let's actually pick up a few lines earlier. I mean, Alan de B'Shvua. So it's 17 lines up from the bottom. Perfect. So remember again, just to reorient ourselves a bit. So remember again, we've been introduced to the concept of kefel, right? And the concept of kefel is, if you steal something, remember gneva, not gzela. Gzela is like outright theft. Gneva is surreptitious or secretive theft. So if you go ahead and you steal something through gneva and you are found with that item, you have to pay double. That's the classic case of gneva. What we've also been introduced to is the concept of toin tainas ganov. What's that case? Right. I deposit an object with Ruvain. He's a shomer, whatever it is. He's a shomer, and then what happens? I come back to get it from him, and then it turns out that he says, "I'm so sorry, it was stolen from me." It turns out that it wasn't stolen from him, but he decided to keep it. He decided to steal it. That's also called an act of gneva, and therefore once he's found out, he has to go ahead and pay kefel. He has to pay double. So we've been hyper-focused on that last case of Toin Tainas Ganav, because what the Gemara introduced us to in yesterday's daf, which was quite interesting, is that the only time he actually has to pay kefel is if he took a shvuah, he swore. So in other words, the progression of events would be like this. I deposit the object with Ruvain. I come back to Ruvain. Ruvain, give me back my object. Ruvain says, I'm so sorry, it was stolen. I said, Ruvain, well, okay, you have to swear that it was stolen and that you're not misappropriating it. He stole it. And then, he swore. And then after he swore, it turns out that he swore falsely. Halacha l'maisa, that's when he has to pay kefel. So he has to pay kefel. But for example, the Brisa said, if he were to be found out before he swore, then halacha l'maisa, there's no kefel. He only would pay keren. He only would pay principal. So now the Gemara asks, Uminon de b'shvua. So we've already established, in other words, here's what we know. There's one other piece to this. We have essentially 3 different psukim by kefel. 3 different psukim. What we're going to spend a lot of today on is trying to figure out why we need each of those psukim. So we'll say, so now that we've successfully established, according to the Gemara, that obviously a regular ganav pays kefel, that we know because it's a pasuk in the Torah. Toin tainas ganav pays kefel, we know because we established that from the pasuk yesterday. Now, the last kind of outline piece of information is, why is it, or how do we know, that toin tainas ganav only pays kefel after having sworn falsely? That's the piece that we're trying to figure out. How do you know that in order to be chayiv kefel by toin tainas ganav, by the shomer who was watching the object, then swore that he did not have it, actually differently, watching the object, claimed that it was stolen, then swore that it was stolen, then it was found out that it was swearing falsely, that's when he has to pay kefel. So we know the Sanyo, the Nikra Balabais El Elokim. The pasuk says that the owner will come close to the Elohim. So the Gemara says, L'shvua. So we'll say, so again, just to give you the context of the pasuk is, Ki yitin ish al re'ehu, kesef al kelim l'shmar, v'gunav mi beis ha'ish, im yimatze haganav yishalim. Okay, so we'll say, so that's the pasuk, right? So that's the context. That a person will go ahead and give to his friend, kesef or kelim, money or utensils to watch, the guna bebeis ha'ish, and it was stolen from the house of the person. Who's the person? The shomer, right? So what's the halacha? If the thief is found, the thief has to pay kefel. That's pasuk 1. Well, I mean, it's Shmos, Parak Chav Beis, pasuk Vav. We'll say, then the very next pasuk, Im lo yimatzeh haganav. But what happens if they can't find the thief? So again, I will say, I give the object to Ruvain, right? Ruvain, watch over it for me. I go back to Ruvain. Ruvain, give me back my object. Ruvain says, I'm so sorry, it was stolen. Okay, if they find the thief has to pay kefal. That's scenario 1. In the following pasuk, Torah says, well, what happens if they don't find the thief? So then what's the halacha? V'nikra b'alabais el Elohim, im lo shalach yadav mechas ra'eu. So I'll say, then what happens if they can't find the thief? Ruvain has to come close to Elohim. If he did not go ahead and misappropriate the object. So the Gemara says, what does that mean, coming close to Elohim? In this case, it doesn't mean God. In this case, again, it means a judge. What does it mean, ultimately, again, that he's coming close to a judge? The Gemara says, the Shavua. So ultimately, again, that means a Shavua. So you see from here that Allah Chalamaysa, the only time that the shomer is going to be obligated to pay kefil when he's towing tainas kanov is if he swore falsely. Atomar l'shavua o ein al-din. So you think, you're saying for shavua, maybe it just means for adjudication, and maybe that's what it means. Ne'emar shlichos yad lamata, v'ne'emar shlichos yad lamala. Both say talks about misappropriation before, misappropriation afterwards. Mal halon b'shavua af kan l'shavua. So both say every single time we find that lashon of shlichos yad, imlo shalach yado. That's the expression shalach yado. Outstretch your hand. That is the lashon that the Torah uses for misappropriation. So every single time the Torah uses that lashon of misappropriation, it's always in the context of generating an obligation for shvuah. So too over here, in this case, where the shomer is claiming tainas ganov, he's claiming the object was stolen from me, so the only way ultimately we go ahead and we clarify that case is through shvuah. Afkan l'shvuah. What's incredible? So I was saying, so now, sometimes in life you have to pause for a moment and reflect on your accomplishments. So let's pause for a second. What do we have? Now, number 1, I know that a person who steals, right, gneva, surreptitiously is chayiv for kefal. Number 2, towing tainas ganav. I know that a shomer who's watching an object claims that it was stolen, and then it turns out that he stole it is also chayiv kefal. But now, number 3, you've clarified that last case only applies when the shomer swore falsely to that effect, then was found out to be lying, now he's chayiv kefal. Okay, beautiful. So now let's unravel this a little bit. So so remember again, this goes back to yesterday's daf. We have 2 different psukim. Actually, it's really going to be 3. We have 2 different psukim that speak about kefal. So obviously the question becomes, why do you need 2 psukim by kefal? So according to the opinion that says one is talking about a ganov, right, a person who just straight out steals, right, and one is towing tainas ganov, then it makes a lot of sense, right? I need 2 psukim because in reality there are 2 different cases. Elman damar tarvayu betowing tainas ganov trei kroi lamali. I will say, but according to the opinion who holds that both psukim really refer to the same case of towing tainas ganov. Why do I need 2 psukim for the same concept? Amri chad lemeute tainas avad. One is to come to exclude tainas avad. But when we saw this in yesterday's daf, I deposit an object with Ruvain. I come back to Ruvain and say, Ruvain, give him my object. Ruvain says, I'm so sorry, it was lost. It then turns out that he stole it. So let's remember again, in that case, even had he taken a shvuah to that effect, he's only chayiv keren. He's only chayiv principal, right? He's not chayiv any additional kefal amount. So we'll say, so therefore again, I have one pasuk to teach me that towing tainas ganov is chayiv kefal, and another pasuk to exclude towing tainas avad, a claim that the object was lost. Okay? So we'll say, so according to the opinion that uses the 2 psukim, one for ganov, one for towing tainas ganov, delo miyaser lemiute tainas avad, Minalan. So we'll say, so therefore, where does that second opinion? So the one opinion that uses the pasuk, one pasuk for ganov, one pasuk for towing tainas ganov, from where does he learn out the exclusion of towing tainas avad? So which the Gemara says, Miganov Haganov. Because we'll say the pasuk could have said Ganov, but instead, in a shorter way, instead it says Haganov. So that elongated form of the word comes to teach me an exclusion that is only Gneva. It's either only Gneva itself or a claim of Gneva, which generates an obligation for kefel, but ultimately, again, a claim of lost object does not generate obligation of kefel. Incredible. So the Gemara goes right to Leman Amar Tarvayu b'Toyin Tanas Ganov, and the opinion that says that both psukim are Toyin Tanas Ganov, de miet le Toyin Tanas Abad. I'm sorry, Ganav HaGanov, my Darishbe. So we'll say, so ultimately again, the opinion that says that both psukim are Toyin Tanas Ganov, so therefore one is to teach you Toyin Tanas Ganov, one is to teach you to exclude Toyin Tanas Avad. What does he use Ganav HaGanov? What does he use the elongated form of the word to teach me? Very interesting. So the Gemara says, listen to this. If a shomer claims that the object was stolen, ultimately again, and it turns out that he stole it, he has to go ahead and pay kefel. Tavach u'machar. If he goes ahead and he slaughters it and sells it, mishalem teshlume arba v'chamisha. Ultimately, again, he pays the 4 and 5 time penalty payment. So ultimately, again, so Ganov Haganov, he'll learn that not only is Toyin Tainas Ganov, not only is he chayiv for kefel, but if he went ahead and slaughtered and sold it, he'd be chayiv arba v'chamisha, the 4 and 5 time penalty payment. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Chia bar Abba. I'm sorry. It's fine. Leman the Amr Chad beganav b'chad b'Toyin Tanas Ganov. The Ganov Haganov afkil miute Tanas Avad. Rabbi Chia bar Abba minale. But I will say the one ultimately again who darshans that ultimately one pasuk is Baganov, one pasuk is Toyin Tanas Ganov. He used Gonev HaGonev to exclude Tanas Avad. Where does he learn out this halacha? Rabbi Chia bar Abba. So Amalacha Hekeshehu. It's a hekesh. It's a comparison. Ve'in mashivin allocation. Ultimately, again, there is no refutation. Ultimately, again, for a hekesh. So we'll say what we're doing a lot over here now. It's interestingly enough, now that we've solidified our facts, what we're looking at is the different forms of the drashas. Right? There are 2 psukim by kefel, and essentially the fundamental machlokes is what do you do by the 2 psukim of kefel. So one opinion is saying both are referring to Toyin Tanas Ganov, right? Both referring to Toyin Tanas Ganov, and why do you need 2? To one, ultimately, to teach you the halacha of Toyin Tanas Ganov, and the other, to exclude Toyin Tanas Avad. That if a shomer, right, if I deposit an object with Reuben, and I say, Reuben, give back my object, and Reuben says, oh, I'm so sorry, it was lost, even if he swears to that effect, that doesn't generate the kefel liability. That's one school of thought. Other school of thought says, the 2 psukim, one is to teach me Ganov, that a Ganov is chayv in kefel. The other is to teach me that Toyin Tanas Ganov ultimately is chayv in kefel. So all the Gemara is doing is kind of ping-ponging back and forth about what each one does with all of the available drashas within this section. Okay? So so according to the opinion that says one pasuk is by Ganov and one pasuk is Toyin Tanas Ganov, so the Gemara says, Shapir, Alaman Damar Tarvayu b'Toyin Tanas Ganov, Ganov Atzmo Minale. So I will say this is great, and we were waiting for the Gemara to ask this question the entire time, which is like this. Let me wrap my head around this. So there are 2 psukim by kefel. So if you hold that one pasuk teaches you that a Ganov has to pay kefel, one pasuk teaches you that Toyin Tanas Ganov has to pay kefel, great. But if you use both of those psukim to teach you Toyin Tanas Ganov, then what? From where do you know that a Ganov himself pays kefel? Where did that concept come from? So the Gemara says, or maybe you say, say it's like a kavachomer. If Toyin Tanas Ganov pays kefel, then what? Then all the more so, Ganov himself pays kefel. Right? You can make that kavachomer. So the Gemara says, but here's the problem with the kavachomer. Anytime you have a kavachomer, so remember again, nothing could ever be stronger than the source from which we are learning out that kavachomer. Malahalan b'shua, afkan b'shua. But if you're going to learn out Ganov from Toyin Tanas Ganov, then I can make the following argument. Towing Tainas Ganav is only chayiv in kefal of what? If you took a shvuah. So you're going to tell me now that a Ganav is also only chayiv in shvuah, only chayiv in kefal if he pays a shvuah? If he takes a shvuah, that would be a strange thing to say. But if you learn it from a Kavah Chomer, that's what you would be forced to say. Nafkale, no, Gemara says you're right. Nafkale midatana debei chizkiah. The truth is, the concept that a Ganav himself is chayiv in kefal is learned out from the following teaching of debei chizkiah. The Tana debei chizkiah, Yomar Shar Ugneva Vakol Bichlal. So we'll say now. Remember again another pasuk. Pasuk says, "Im himasei timatzei biado hagneva mishar ad chamar ad se chaim shnayim mishalim." So we'll say so now. A pasuk says, "If you will find in his hand the stolen object." So this is talking about just a thief. You find in his hand the stolen object, right? Mishar ad chamar, ultimately again from an ox until a donkey, ad se to a sheep, chaim alive. Shnayim mishalim, you have to pay kefal. You have to pay kefal. Okay, so now watch what we do with this pasuk. So the Veichizkiya Yomar, Yomar Shar Ugneva, Vakol Bichlal. The pasuk doesn't have to mention all of these animals. Just say Shar, that's an example of livestock, and just say ultimately again Shar Ugneva, and any stolen object, Vakol Bichlal, and everything else would have been included in that. So the Gemara says, Ilukach Hayis Yomer. If that was the case, ultimately it's a long week. If that was the case, Hayisi Omer Mahaprat Mefurash Krav Lagabi Mizbeach. So both say again, I would have thought like this. That Lamaisa, if it would have just said Shar and Gneva, I would have thought like this. Gneva, both say is like a klal, a general statement. Shar is like a prat. Now, I don't mean to dash this like a klal and prat. I just mean to look at it just at the pasuk. And I would have said, if the Torah is identifying Shar, what's unique about Shar? Shar can be offered up on the Mizbeach. Af kol krav v'kavi Mizbeach. So to again, maybe you're only chayiv kefil for items that are offered up on the Mizbeach. So the Gemara says, Ma yesh lecha lahavi seh. So ultimately again, what else would you include in this? In a seh, so the Gemara says, top of Samach Daled, Kishu omer seh, hare seh amor. Ha ma'ani mekayim. So we'll say, so again, what else would that include? So now if Shar comes along, so Shar would teach me anything that is offered up on the Mizbeach, ultimately again is chayiv and kefal. Now, fine. So what else does that include? I will say, now remember, you don't offer every single animal on the Mizbeach, right? So for example, again, you don't offer non-domesticated animals. So for example, there's no carbon that comes from a deer, right? For example. So what else could it come to include? A seh, sheep. Okay, now the pasuk also says sheep, right? So in other words, so kishu omer seh amar ha ma'ani mekayim. So gneva l'rabos kol davar. So again, so now we have shar, we have seh, and both say gneva. When the pasuk says gneva, that comes to include everything in kefal. So yomar shar seh ugneva va'kol bichlal. So therefore, again, I will say, so let the pasuk say shar, seh, and gneva, and everything else is included. Ilukach hayisi omer ma prat mefurash davar hakadosh bebechora. Af kol davar hakadosh bebechora. Ma yesh lecha lahavi chamor. So we'll say here's the problem. The problem is if you have shar and seh. So I would say like between those two, what do you know? You have animals that are offered up on the mizbeach and animals that have firstborn sanctity. Right, animals that have firstborn sanctity. So the Gemara says, so ma yesh lecha lahavi chamar. So ultimately, I bring in chamar. Kisha omer chamar. So ultimately, now when the pasuk says chamar, hare chamar amar ha ma'ani mekayim gneva l'rabos kol davar. So yomar shar v'chamar seh ugneva v'akol bichlal. So we'll say, so the Gemara is just trying to understand over here. Why is it that the pasuk is including all of these specific items that it is mentioning? Because we'll say, had it just said this, I would have said, Ma prat mefurash balechayim, af kol balechayim. So we'll say, if you look at the pasuk between shar, chamar, seh, so that includes livestock. So I would have said, okay, maybe it's tafka livestock ultimately for which you're chayiv kefel. Gemara says, Af kol balei chayim, ma yesh lecha lahavi, shar balei chayim. Kishu omer chayim, hare chayim amar. So we'll say, here's the problem. See, we'll say what ends up happening is, every single time we include something, so we say to ourselves, okay, you're coming to include now another category. Then what happens? The Torah says something else. So for example, if it would have just said, shar, chamar, and seh. Now each of those things has something unique. has something unique. And I would have said, okay, all of them together teach me that all livestock items are included in all living items are included in kefel. But then the Torah goes out of its way to say the word chayim, right? Which once again means all living things. So I'm left wondering why the Torah goes through such incredible specificity. So the Gemara says, Kishu Omer Chayim, Hari Chayim Amar, Hamani Makayim Gneva, L'Rabos Kol Davar. Ultimately, and therefore Rabbi says, so Chayim comes to tell me all living things. Gneva must come to include all items. Amar Mar, Yomar Shar U Gneva. So again, Rabbi says, so we said before, so let it just say Shar and Gneva, and that should be enough. That should be enough to include everything. Miksiv Shar U Gneva. So the Gemara says, does it say Shar and Gneva? Gneva v'Shar Hu Dichsiv. We'll say it's interesting. It's interesting because if you were writing the pasuk, you would have thought, let it say Shar, which is like a prat, a more limiting idea, and then Gneva, all encompassing. But that's not how the pasuk is written. The pasuk is written Gneva and then Shar. So the Gemara says, V'chi tema ilu ne'emar ka'amar. Ilu ne'emar shar u'gneva. If the pasuk would have said shar and gneva, in other words, in that order, so umi matzis amris maha prat mefurash. So we'll say, would you be able to make the statement just like the prat? Right? Again, if that's the case, so we'll say you would have said the halacha l'maisa, there's a prat, the shar, and then ultimately again the klal gneva. So have a shar prat u'gneva klal. Shar would have been the prat, the specific item, right? Gneva would have been the klal, the more inclusive statement. So the Gemara says, I have a shar prat, u'gneva klal, prat u'klal, na'aseh klal mosif al ha-prat. So I will say, when you have a prat and a klal, right, which would have been shar and gneva, so ultimately, again, what ends up happening is, the klal is mosif on the prat, the israbu luhu kol mili, and that would come to include everything. Ella kedichsiv ka'amri. Rather, I will say, we're looking at the way that it's written. Geneva v'shar. So I will say, see now, but it's not written that way, right? In other words, had it been written shar and geneva, I would have said, again, you have a prat and a klal. And if you have a prat and a klal, ultimately the klal comes to expand on the prat. But ultimately, again, how is it written? Ella kedichsiv ka'amri, Geneva v'shar. I will say, how is it written in the pasuk? The way it's written in the pasuk is the prat and then the klal. So mi matzis amris hakol b'chlal. So we'll say you can't mention it the same way. O ha prat mefurash havile geneva klal v'shar prat. Rather, what you have to say is like this: Geneva is the klal and shar is the prat. So the Gemara says klalu prat. When you have a klalu prat, what's the halacha? Ein bichlal ela masha beprat. So we'll say here's the problem. When you have a klal and a prat, right? Remember again, a general statement, or an inclusive statement, and a more limiting statement. So the way you darshan that is that ultimately, again, the prat limits the klal. The prat limits the klal. So suddenly, again, there is no expansive statement. All there is the limiting statement. So therefore, you have geneva and shar. What that would seem to do is limit kefel to what? To a shar. So the Gemara says, shar in midi achrina lo. It would dafka be a shar, and ultimately, again, nothing else. Amarava, Tana achayim kasamich. So I'll say there's one more piece. There's one more piece. What's the one more piece? So I'll say there's one more word in all of this, which is chayim. Chayim means in all of these items in the Gemara, in the pasuk, it says living. Remember again, it's himase biyadu agneva. If you find a stolen object in the hands of the thief, mishar ad chamar ad seh chayim. Chayim. So what is that chayim? Amarava tana achayim samichlei. Now, also before we go on, take a quick look at Rashi. So Rashi says achayim samich. It's almost like right in the middle of Rashi. So Rashi says over here achayim samich geneva dahavile klala Kamma samichlei achayim dahavile klala basra vidarish beklal uprat uklal. Now watch this. This is actually quite riveting. So the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says that in reality, where did we get stuck? So we got stuck. You're like, where did we get stuck? I got stuck 20 minutes ago, right? Where did we get stuck? It's actually very methodical. It's not complicated. It's just, again, going through the psukim, going through the pasuk step by step. So we'll say, but where we just got stuck, ultimately, again, in the last iteration of this, I will say, was that in the pasuk itself, that it said Geneva and Shar. right? The way it reads in the pasuk is Himasei timatze biyado hagneva mishar. So where do we get stuck with this? Gneva is what? Gneva is klal. Shar is prat. Shar is prat. When you have a klal and a prat, so we'll say, what does that do? How do you darshan that? Im bichlal alamasha prat. The klal is limited by the prat, which would seem to lead us to the conclusion that the only thing that kefal applies to is a shar. A shar. So I'll say, now the Gemara says, no, that's not the case. In fact, the pasuk is not a klal uprat, but in fact, the pasuk is a klal uprat uklal. Where is the second klal? Chayim. Chayim. That's the last word. Both say, the beauty of this is that you begin to see how the Ribono Shel Olam, in His infinite, structured the pasuk in a way that ultimately, again, allows us to darshan things, but it has to be written a certain way. So sometimes we look at a pasuk and we look at it, it looks so unnecessarily verbose. I have to put all this stuff in here. Just say you have to be careful for a stolen object, but you begin to see. Remember, the pasuk has to detail some level of information, and the problem is when you say one thing that has one impact, when you say something different has a different impact. So therefore, what appears to be some of these extraneous words actually, again, create this beautiful halachic symphony. So that word chayim, which we thought was extraneous this entire time, is not. It's embedded there. Why? It's embedded there ultimately again because that creates the other bookend of a klal. So suddenly, I don't have a klal and a prat, which just exegetically would have led me to a dead end and say that kefel only applies to a shar, but now I have chayim, which gives me a klal and a prat and a klal. It's so beautiful. Amar Rav Satana chayim kasamechlei uklal uprat uklal ka'amalei. So now it's a klal uprat uklal. Vaha lo dam. So we'll say, so now that I have, now go back to that Rashi. V'darish b'chlal uprat uklal. V'seifa diktani. V'yomar Geneva Shar Sev V'chamar V'akol B'chlal Hoil V'achayim Samichlei Meso good. So therefore, so now I have a klal upratu klal. Because I have a klal upratu klal, suddenly again I can open the door to kefel to many different things. The Gemara says V'halo Dami Klala Basra LeKlala Kamma. But 1 second. Apparently, the Gemara is suggesting that the second klal Chayim is not like the first klal Gneva. Now, what does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, "V'halo dami klal basra tilo kayil ela bali chayim lichlala kamma demashma kol davar." I will say this is an interesting point. Generally, for a klal upratu klal, what do you need? Your two klals have to be bookends. In order to be bookends, they have to be similar. Interesting. I will say, so what are my two klal bookends in this pasuk? Geneva and chayim. The Gemara says they're not similar. Why are they not similar? We'll say, what is when you see the word Geneva, stolen object, in your mind, what does that include? What does that include? Anything, right? Any object that you steal, right? Again, what will it now, this is important, what will it exclude? What will it exclude? Any object you can't steal. What can't you steal? For example, what can't you steal? Karka, land. The second klal, Chayim, we'll say only includes what? Living items. That's a much narrower category, right? Geneva includes everything. It can include, an animal, and it can include a car, and it can include livestock, and it can include a wad of cash. But Chayim only includes living beings, right? Animals, right? So both say, so how do you make a klal upratu klal when your two bookend klals are not the same? So the Gemara says, "Vaha lo dami klal v'asa leklal Kamma." So the Gemara says, "Ha tana dever b'shmalhu dechi agavna darish klal uprati." So we'll say, so apparently now it's interesting in the world of exegesis, right? In the world of the darshanos, apparently again there's a machlokes about klal upratu klal, the mechanics of that. So we were operating under the assumption that for klal upratu klal, the first klal and the second klal have to be similar in nature. But apparently, Rabbi Shmuel, they understood that klal upratu klal, the two bookend klals do not have to be the same. They don't have to be the same. They could even be different, right? As long as they are both klals, it works. Okay. So we'll say, so here's the kasha. So we'll say, so now, essentially, I've gone through the pasuk and I understand why Geneva, Shar, Chamar, Se, and Chayim are all included. Now let's go back to the beginning of the pasuk. Why do I need the double lashon of himasei timasei? What is that? What is that? The Gemara says, Im himatzei timatzei lamali. So I'll say, what do I need? So Rashi says over here, Im himatzei timatzei, temashma ribuye lamali, v'hashta kamafarish rabba l'kula masnisin. So I'll say, so what do I need himatzei timatzei? What does that do? So the Gemara says, Yomar shar ugneva v'chayim, v'akol b'chlal. Just write shar, gneva, and chayim. And again, I will say that tells me what? That tells me everything. What do you have me to say? So the Gemara says, Ilu Kain, if it would have said that, Hayisi Omer, Mahaprat Mefurash Davar Hakar Gabi Mizbeach. So we'll see, here's the problem. If it would have said those items, I would have said that what do you chayiv kefil for? Items that could be offered up on the Mizbeach. So I'll say, Af kol hakarev Gabi Mizbeach. So too, again, everything else, so therefore, again, kol comes to teach me. I'm sorry. If it would have just said, ultimately again, the prat. So I would have said the prat, I will say, of shar, se, and chamar. Ultimately, what's the common denominator? They're all offered up on the Mizbeach. Now, remember, chamar is not offered up on the Mizbeach, but chamar does have kidushas bechar. So in other words, these are all items with some relative level of sanctity. Either carbonic sanctity, or again, kedushas bechar sanctity. So too again, for kefel, only items that possess some level of sanctity are subject to kefel. So the Gemara says, Ma yesh lahavi. So seh. So let's analyze this. So what else are you including in the pasuk? Let's say seh. Kishu omer seh, hare seh amar. So we'll say, so fine. So what else would include? Include seh. So now once the pasuk says seh, hamani mekayim geneva. So what does geneva come to include? L'rabos kol davar. So yomar geneva, v'shar v'seh v'chayim v'akol b'chlal. So I'll say, so let it just, like we just said before, let it just say geneva, and ultimately again, shar and sen, everything else is included. So the Gemara says, Ilu kain hayisi omer mahaprat mefurash davar hakadosh bebechora af kol davar hakadosh bebechora. So we'll say, so again, if it would have just included those items, I would have said, what's the common denominator? So they're all kadosh. So what else could be included? An item that has firstborn sanctity. So mayesh l'chalavi. What else could you include? Chamar. Kishu amar chamar. Hare chamar amar. Ha ma'ani mekayim geneva. So what does geneva come to teach me? L'rabos kol davar. So yomar geneva v'shar v'sev v'chamar v'chayim v'akol b'chlal. Ilu kein hayisi omer ma'prat mefurash balechayim af kol balechayim. So we'll say once again, the problem is the pasuk, come down in the pasuk, is it's all living items. Mayesh l'chalavi. What else can you include? Shar balechayim. Kishu omer chayim, hare chayim amar. So we'll say, so what else could you include in the list? All of the living things. Okay, so chayim includes all living things. So the Gemara says, hamani mekayim geneva l'rabos kol davar. So we'll say, so geneva, right? This is what we said before. The role of geneva ultimately again is to include all items. So we'll say, so again, let's look exactly what we said before. So shar, chamar, and seh ultimately again each come with their own unique aspect. Chayim comes also to teach you that all living things are included in Kefel. As you said before, Chayim also serves another purpose. What's the other purpose of Chayim? It's also the second klal. Right? Remember again, we're dual purposing certain things. And Geneva, then it also comes to say, lest you think that Kefel only applies to living objects, it's all stolen items. Okay. So now we fully round out the question. If that's the case, im himatzei timatzei lamali. So now we'll say, this is actually quite beautiful. So I'll say, in the pasuk of Kefel, I understand actually why every single part of the pasuk is necessary. I understand the need for Geneva, Shar, Chamar, Seh, Chayim. I know that each one of those pieces has a purpose, right? But I will say, here's the problem. Geneva kind of is like the cherry on top, right? Geneva says, any stolen object is subject to Kefel. So if that's the case, himatzei timatzei, what does that do for me? We'll say Amud Beis, Samachtal Amud Beis, 64b, ihachi shaper kashalei. Ultimately, again, it's a good kasha. Mishum di'is lei pircha. So the Gemara says, l'rabos kol davar mehecha kamaisila michlal basra. So we'll say, so now let's analyze this a little bit. So remember, going back to what we said before. So where are we learning out? Where ultimately, again, are we learning out that all items are included in Kefel? So the truth is, remember, it's not by Geneva itself. What is it? It's Geneva and the second klal. What's the second klal? Chayim. So the rabbos kol davar mehecha kamaisila michlal basra. Ultimately, again, I'm learning out from klal basra. So klala gufei chayim ksivbei klal uprat uklal. So here's the interesting part. The klal itself says Chaim. Now, we'll say this is kind of reminiscent a little bit of the previous question. If the second klal ultimately is Chaim, Chaim seems once again to limit things ultimately again to living items. So how does the klalu pratu klal actually help? So the Gemara says, watch this. Ila asuye kol davar, if it comes to include all items, ha-chayim ksiv, bali chayim in midiachar in ilo. This is what we said before. You see, here's the problem. You see, the way the Gemara asked the question before was, how can you make a klalu pratu klal when the two bookend klals are not the same? Geneva and chayim are not the same. The Gemara says, it's actually a much more fundamental question. The whole yisod of a klalu pratu klal is what? Is that the beauty of it is, I have a klal which is an all-encompassing word or phrase. And then I have a prat, which gives me specific details. So now I understand that the prat is kind of giving me the criteria for the klal. The problem is, when your klal is chayim, I'll say that's not a klal. It's not a klal. Chayim is an incredibly limiting word, because chayim says that the only thing that kefil applies to is living objects. So ultimately, I will say, when I look at chayim, chayim tells me, bali chayim in midiachar nilo. So how does this help? How does this help to be a bookend klal and include other things in kefil? Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Gemara says, you're right. Now I will say, so it's just fascinating what's happening over here. Really riveting. So on one hand, I need chayim. Remember, let's go through this for a second. Let's go back. Let's pause. Then I will say, why do I need a second klal? Why do I need chayim? Why do I need a second klal? If I don't have that second klal, what do I have? I have Geneva and Shar. Right? What is that? Klalu prat. When you have a klalu prat, what happens with the klalu prat? Ein bichlal elamasha beprat. That tells you there's no klal. That essentially eliminates the klal and says all you have is a prat. So all you would have in that case is Shar. And that would tell you that all kefil applies to a Shar. That's a big problem. So what is the Torah do? What does Cheshbon Baruch Hu do? He adds in chayim. That's a klal, another klal. The problem also with chayim, now the beauty of chayim, in general, with the beauty of chayim, right? The beauty of chayim is that ultimately, again, it includes all livestock, right? Everything. The problem with it is it still only refers to items in the animal kingdom. So I'll say, so now I have a second klal, so that helps. Now at least chayim helps, and then I no longer have a klal and prat. I have a klalu pratu klal. That's beautiful. My problem is, my second klal is really stunted, because it only refers to animals, to living things. I'll say, ultimately again, mishum hachi itzderich im himatzei. So I'll say, so now, ultimately again, now I understand the role of himatzei in the beginning of the pasuk. So I'll say, so ultimately again, what's the role of himatzei? Take a look at Rashi. The medrash klali minei kid mefarish va'azil. So I'll say what we're going to see over here is something really fascinating, which is that the initial im himatzei is also going to act as another klal within the pasuk. But the beautiful part is it's not a klal that's limited to livestock. Right? Again, what is himatzei? Remember, again, I'll say the lashon of the pasuk is im himatzei biyad hagneva. If the stolen object is found in your hand, now we'll say himatzei is the general saying. What does it say? Whatever is found in your hand, you are chayiv kefil for. Whatever it is, livestock, not livestock, you're going to be chayiv. So therefore, this is where himatzei Amri. So we'll say, so therefore again, this is beautiful, no? This is like a perfect symphony. So we'll say, so therefore again, what do I have? I have Geneva klal, right? Geneva klal, right? Shar, chamar, se, prat, chayim klal. So the beautiful thing is I have a klalu pratu klal. Only one problem with it is that chayim is not the best klal, right? Why is chayim not the best klal? Because it only refers to something living. How does the Torah compensate for that? Himatzei. It's beautiful. So himatzei is like the additional klal that's there to bolster the klal of chayim. Absolutely beautiful. I just want to tell you the beauty of what it is that's unfolding in the Gemara like this. I know that some may not find this Gemara quite as riveting. But I just want to tell you what's happening over here. The beauty of this is you see how the way every single word in the Torah is methodical, right? The Ribono Shel Olam the way he wrote his Torah, is that there's forethought behind every single word. Everything is arranged exactly how it needs to be arranged in order to teach us something incredible. So there's a number of lessons in this. First of all, to see the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to see, I will say, this gives you a little bit of an insight. The way HaKadosh Baruch Hu writes his Torah is an insight into the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. And the same way that in the way that he writes his Torah, there is detail, right? Or there is attention to every single detail. Placement of the word is methodical. Choosing of the word choice, right, is methodical. So that's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs his Torah, or I should say, writes his Torah. Alachas Kamma v'Kamma. It's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs his world. There is a method. There is a method in every single detail, just like there's a method in every single word, even if we can't see it, right? Just saying, Rabbi, before we started today's daf, you would look at this pasuk and you'd say, wow, that's really strange. That's a very unnecessarily verbose pasuk. Im himatze timatze biyodo hagneva mishar ad chamar ad se chaim. What? What is all that? And I will say, what are we doing? Right, step after step, I begin to realize every single word is necessary, every single word is specific, and the order is not random, right? Everything has a seder. The same way HaKadosh Baruch Hu writes his Torah with incredible chachma with every single word, that is the way he runs his world. So it gives us a window. These Gemaras give us a window into the greatness of the Ribono Shel Olam. That's number one. Number two, I will say, is the same way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is so careful and medactic with his words. Ultimately, again, it's a good mussar for us to be medactic in our words as well. See, in the Ribono Shel Olam's Torah, there's no word that doesn't serve a purpose. But say, imagine if we brought that same level of forethought and that same level of koved rosh to our words as well. If we didn't speak, unless, of course, those words had a purpose. If we didn't write something, unless, of course, those words had a specific purpose. How much better our lives would be, how much better the world would be. And one last lesson, I will say, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the master of balance. He's the master of balance. I mentioned this before. When we recite the bracha of Asher Yatzar, the way the bracha ends is we say HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Rofei Kol Basar Umafli La'asos. He is the healer of all flesh and does wondrous things. So what's the pshat? Mafli La'asos? So I will say, I've mentioned this before. The Chafetz Chaim says something so beautiful. The Chafetz Chaim says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu heals and man heals. What's the difference between when man heals and when HaKadosh Baruch Hu heals? Generally, when man heals, the way man heals is, you have to break one thing in order to go ahead and heal something else. That's the way it works, right? Person takes a medication. So it's fascinating, right? Almost every single medication has what? Has a side effect. That's the way human healing works, right? I'm gonna fix this, but again, there's a cost to fixing this. Something else is probably going to go wrong, right? You're going to take the medication, you're going to get nauseous, you're going to have this, you're going to have that, right? Or I will say, I think always the greatest example of this is like chemotherapy, right? A person has that. So again, it could cure you, or radiation, right? It could cure you, but it's going to break down every single system in the process. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu heals, it's holistic. The Ribono Shel Olam heals, Rofei Kol Basar. So I will say, because the Ribono Shel Olam is the only entity that is capable of truly creating complete equilibrium in the universe. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu could heal everything simultaneously without breaking anything else. I'll say, for me, I'll tell you the beauty of these Gemaras. What's the beauty? I'll say, what is the takeaway message of this entire exercise? It's equilibrium. Right? It's like you do this and the universe is perfect. The pasuk is perfect. The pasuk gives you every single thing that you need in order to come out with a complete knowledge and a complete picture. This is Rofei Kol Basar Umafli Lazos. This is the Pella. From this little drasha, it's not a little drasha, from this big drasha, what do you see? The same Ribono Shel Olam who creates equilibrium in a pasuk is the same Ribono Shel Olam who creates equilibrium in a Torah, is the same Ribono Shel Olam who creates equilibrium in the universe. And even if you and I can't see it, which more often than not, we cannot. Even if I can't see it, I believe that it's there, or I believe that it's going to be established at some point in time. This type of Gemara, Bosai, this is the Gemara that fuels our emunah. The same HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows all of the pieces to fit into place. In the pasuk and a daf of Baba Kamma is the same Ribono Shel Olam who puts all of the pieces in place in our lives, in our nation's life, and in our world as well. Incredible. Back to Timatzeh. Good. So the Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara says, so therefore I have Timatzeh, because that second klal of Chaim is not really like the best klal. It's a beautiful klal, but it's not the best klal because only referring to livestock, Timatzeh comes in. So the Gemara says, let's analyze this. I agree. So we're gonna see, by the way, the full drasha of Timatzeh in just a moment. So Amri Vaha Shnei Klalos T'Smichi Adadininu. So I will say now this is really strange. You don't find this often. So what are you telling me now in the pasuk? I have Timatzeh. What's the word after Timatzeh? Right now it's biyada, but right afterwards is Gneva. So I will say, so now Timatzeh is a klal. Gneva is a klal. That's interesting. So you have two klalos with a chaf, not a kuf. Right, two klalos. Ultimately, again, right next to each other. So this is incredible. But I just want to tell you something. Like, there is so much that is happening over here from like an exegetical perspective. So much like that about how psukim works. Listen to what they used to say in Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, they said as follows. We'll say any time that you have two klals, right? Two inclusive words or statements or phrases. Hasnuchem zalazeh, hatel prat beinehem, vidonam bichlal uprat. It's really klal uprat to klal. So I'll say this is great. This is, get ready for this. It's so exciting. Anytime that you have two klals next to each other, so what do you do with that? The Gemara says the way you're supposed to look at it is like this. Take the pratim in the pasuk and put it in between those two klals. Wow. So what should I got going on in this pasuk? So I have im himatzeh timatzeh biyado hagneva. So I there I have two klals, himatzeh timatzeh and gneva. So now what do? I take all of the pratim in the pasuk and put it in the middle of those two klals, and now I have a klal uprat uklal. Here we go. So the Gemara says, for example, shadei shar ben himatzeh letimatzeh. So I'll say now. Remember again. In fact, by the way, I actually have really three klals happening in this pasuk over here, because himatzeh timatzeh is two klals. It's two klals. So we'll say the first thing I do is I'm going to put shar between himatzeh and timatzeh. Okay, so we'll say, so now that gives me himatzeh klal, shar prat, timatzeh klal. Klal prat to klal, la suyemai, what does it come to include? Ila suye bali chayim. See if it's coming to include other animals. I don't need that. Why? Michayim nafka. I get that from chayim later on in the pasuk. Right? Ela la suye davar she'ein ba'alei chayim. Rather, it must come to include what? Something that's not an animal. It's not an animal. Right? So Shar tells me animals, and then the Klal Protocol comes teaching additional animals as well. I have a Dara Shachi, but what do we dash in the following? Ma Prat Mufurash Dara Hamatalto Vagufa Mamon. So wow, here we go. So I can say like this, Shar, what's unique about a Shar? Number one is that it's mobile. Number two is that it has an inherent value. So I'll darshan I've called davar hamataltel for gufa mamon. So Rabbi say again the klal. So I'm going to put shar in between himatzeh and timatzeh. Just like shar ultimately is mobile and has inherent value, so to any item that is mobile and has inherent value is subject to kefal. Visu. Furthermore, again, let's put shadei chamar ben himatzeh letimatzeh. Let me throw in chamar over there also. So we're just going methodically over here. Let me put chamar in there also. Let me put chamar between himatzeh and timatzeh. So we'll say, what would that come to include? Asuyemai, ila asuye davar she'in bali chayim. See if you're going to tell me he's coming to teach you something that even is not livestock, it's not an animal. I already learned that out. Mishar nafka, ela asuye davar mesuyam. Interesting. We'll say, what is it coming to include? It's coming to include something that has a siman. I was about to say, we learned this in yesterday's daf. You're only chayiv kefil for an item that has a siman. What does that mean? It has to be an identifiable item. If it's not an item that you can identify, meaning as yours, then there can't be any claim for kefil. And I'm about to say now that's logical. Why? Because otherwise you have no way of identifying it or proving that the item was stolen from you. So chamor comes along and teaches me, just like every chamor is unique, right? There's no such thing as two chamorim which are the same. Everyone has a siman. So too, again, in order to claim kefil has to have a siman. Ihachi selamali. So we'll say, what do I need sefar? El riba umiet veribohu. So we'll say, okay, get ready for this. So we'll say, so not only is there a klal and prat and klal in this pasuk, but there's also a riboy, a miot, and a riboy. So we'll say b'mayim beis pamim. So we'll say now. Remember, it's talking about totally switching gears over here. Talking about things that you're allowed, water creatures that you are allowed to eat. So the pasuk says, "Azetochlu mikol asher b'mayim." What can you eat? Right, these are the creatures that you're allowed to eat that are within the water. Kol asher lo snapir v'kaskesas b'mayim. Anything that has fins and scales in the water. So it says b'mayim twice. What is b'mayim twice? Ein zeh. So the Gemara said, "My mayim beis pamim ein zeh klal uprat ela riba umiet v'riba." Riba hakol. Ultimately, we'll say, so again, whenever you see, so what is that? That's not a klal uprat, but rather that's a riboy, a miut, and a riboy. And when you have a riboy, a miut, and a riboy, that comes to include everything. My rabbi, so what does it come to include? Rabbi kol mili. Ultimately, again, it comes to include everything in Inyan Kefel. If that's the case, kol hani prati lamali. So we'll say, so okay. So now, if you're going to tell me that se is part of a riboy, a miot, and a riboy, if that's what you're telling me, then I will say the riboy includes everything for Kefel. If the riboy includes everything, then what do I need all of these specifics mentioned in the pasuk? To which I'll tell you why. But I'll say sometimes things are mentioned not for what they include, but rather what? For what they exclude. So here we go. So one item mentioned in the pasuk is coming to exclude karka, that ultimately land is not subject to kefal. We actually saw that in yesterday's daf already, because remember again, land is not mobile. One is coming to exclude avadim from kefal. Why are avadim excluded? Because they are compared to karka. And one is to exclude shtaros. Why shtaros? We saw yesterday's daf, no inherent value. So geneva v'chayim. What do I need? The words geneva and chayim, what do they come to include? The chidraf, da'amar achye lekeren ke'in shaganov. Excuse me, or achai, all right, achye lekeren she'in shaganov. We'll say, what does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi's a little bit lower down on the daf. What does that mean? He says, lekamaru b'shmaitin din ganav behema v'hochsha o huzla v'shayim shas geneva. We'll say, we're going to see that ultimately, again, geneva and chayim teaches me. We'll see this whole drasha. When you steal an object, I will say, the thief is liable for the value of the object at the time that he stole it. If, let's say, again, right, Reuven steals my ox, and the truth is, Reuven did not take care of my ox, and as a result, the ox became weaker. So, and now Reuven's found. Reuven doesn't pay me the present value of the ox, rather what? He pays the value of the ox as it was at the time that it was stolen. Lamanda Amar. So I'll say, so good. That's our whole drasha. So the Gemara says over here, listen to this. One more piece. The kind of atzmo nafkale mimi matzei im yimatzei agan. So we'll say, remember again, going back for just a moment. According to the opinion that says, that one pasuk is to teach me kefal by a ganav. Second pasuk is to teach me tainas ganav. Ultimately, again, ganav atzmo nafka me'im himatzei aganav. So remember again, and ganav himself is learned out from im himatzei aganav. Hi im himatzei timatzei my darshibe. What does he do with himatzei timatzei? Here we go. So we'll finish with this. Meibayle lechidrava bar Eloi. Damar Rava bar Eloi. My time of derav damar mode b'knas potter. The achakach bo edim potter. That will say we know the concept of mode b'knas potter, right? So remember again. Here's what's interesting. What's the logic of mode b'knas potter? And we'll say now. Remember, it gets better. Let's say again, Reuven admits that he stole something, that he's a ganav. So if you're mode b'knas your potter, but not only that, even if witnesses subsequently come and prove his liability, he's still potter. What's the logic? T'chsiv im himatzei timatzei im himatzei be'edim timatzei be'dayanim prat lemarshia es atzmo. So we'll pick up with this tomorrow. We'll say, but interestingly enough, that if you don't need himatzei timatzei for all the aforementioned reasons, himatzei timatzei ultimately teaches me that halacha l'maisa modeh b'knas is potter. Not only that, but even if halacha l'maisa you are modeh and then witnesses subsequently come, you're still going to be potter. All right, so we'll say a lot packed into today. Was a tremendous shkayach. What a beautiful accomplishment to be able to know that at least there's one pasuk in the Torah where we know what every single word does. One pasuk in the Torah. That's a beautiful accomplishment of the day. We'll say good night of Shabbos shkayach.